Every powerful figure has one thing in common. They never run out of enemies. Even when peace is possible, they manufacture war. Even when no one is attacking, they provoke just enough tension to keep the fire alive. Why? Because nothing sharpens power like opposition. Enemies give you something sacred, contrast. They define who you are by showing what you are not. They unify your followers by giving them someone else to blame, to fear, to hate. In Machiavelli's eyes, enemies are not threats. They are tools. Without enemies, your people become bored, soft, and scattered. They question your decisions, your leadership, your relevance. But with a clear enemy, you become the shield, the voice of reason, the one who protects them from what they dread. You give them fear, and then sell them safety, and in doing so, you stay necessary. This isn't about cruelty, it's about psychology. The human mind is wired to rally around danger, to seek protection, meaning, and tribal connection. An enemy creates urgency, and urgency keeps you in power. You've seen it in politics. A candidate failing in polls suddenly becomes under attack. A movement losing traction suddenly finds a scapegoat. Blame shifts, support rises. Why? Because fear unifies faster than love ever could, and this is Machiavelli's dark genius. He understood that you don't need real enemies, you just need perception. A rumor, a whisper, a shadowy force in the distance, that's enough to galvanize loyalty, to justify control, to silence dissent. If the people believe there's a threat, they accept your authority, not because they trust you, but because they fear what happens without you. They don't love the shepherd, they fear the wolves. And so the wisest leaders don't destroy all opposition. They allow just enough of it to remain visible, to remind the people, this is what chaos looks like without me. It's not about being evil, it's about being essential, because when you vanish the enemy completely, the people turn on you. They look inward, they find flaws, they see you not as a savior, but as a tyrant, or worse, irrelevant. And that is the most dangerous moment for any ruler, when the people feel safe. Because safety breeds comfort, comfort breeds boredom, and boredom, it breeds rebellion. Enemies aren't always out there. Sometimes they're created, not in battlefields, but in boardrooms, not by actions, but by narratives. Machiavelli understood this well. Power isn't about defeating enemies, it's about designing them. When you can name a villain, you become the hero. You shift the story, you control the spotlight, you offer the solution to the very problem you invented. And in a world addicted to stories, he who controls the plot controls perception. Think of it. A company launches a product by first demonizing an old way. A politician rises by inventing an external threat. A movement gains momentum by declaring war on a vague injustice. The enemy doesn't even need a face. Just an idea, an ideology, a fear. Because fear is profitable and nothing sells faster than a common enemy. This isn't just strategy, it's survival. The masses are tired, overstimulated, lost in distractions. They don't want truth, they want direction, and enemies provide it. When there's an enemy, questions disappear. Doubt turns to loyalty, people stop thinking and start following. That's why the most successful leaders don't eliminate opposition, they curate it, they frame it, they use it. They know a controlled threat is more useful than a defeated one, because once the war is over, so is the need for a warrior. A ruler without enemies becomes vulnerable, not to attack, but to irrelevance. and irrelevance is fatal. That's why smart leaders sometimes let dissent grow just enough. They allow a voice to rise so they can crush it publicly, so they can remind the people, I am still strong. It's not ego, it's theatre, it's a performance for the masses who crave a savior. Machiavelli didn't just write about politics, he wrote about performance. He knew power was never just taken, it was staged. And in every performance, you need a villain, not necessarily real, just believable. Because as long as people believe the threat is real, they'll believe you are necessary. They will ignore your flaws, forgive your mistakes, justify your control. So ask yourself, are your enemies real? Or are they useful? Are you reacting? Or are you orchestrating? And more importantly, who benefits from the fear you feel? To master the art of power, you must stop thinking of enemies as people and start seeing them as roles. Because in Machiavelli's world, an enemy isn't someone you hate. It's someone who serves a function. Sometimes that function is simple. They distract the crowd. They absorb the blame. They explain the chaos. But sometimes the enemy plays a deeper part. They legitimize your existence. Look closely, and you'll see it everywhere. A leader rises because there's a villain to fight. A prophet speaks because there is a devil to name. A cause gains traction only when there's a threat to resist. Without the enemy, there's no urgency, no need, no identity. It's not enough to rule. You must be needed, and nothing makes you needed like an enemy you promise to defeat. This is where the strategy becomes psychological. When people fear something external, they become internally loyal. They look for a protector. They submit to control. Not because they love chains, but because they dread chaos more. This is the currency of power, not money, not charisma, but fear, carefully placed and skillfully redirected. The best leaders don't just fight enemies, they shape them. They exaggerate their power, not to glorify them, but to justify greater control. And in this game, timing is everything. You don't attack too soon. You don't silence opposition completely. You let it grow, mature, become visible, and then you strike publicly so everyone sees your strength. The defeat becomes theatre, and theatre becomes legacy. But here's the dangerous part. Sometimes the enemy becomes real. Sometimes the mask you created becomes a face. Sometimes the fear you manufactured begins to spread beyond your control, and that's where most rulers fall. They forget you can provoke a lion, but you better know how to chain it. Machiavelli warned about this. Fear is powerful, but it must be managed. Too little fear, and you seem weak. Too much, and you seem tyrannical. The balance is razor thin. So, what do? You become a mirror. You let your enemies reflect what your people already fear. You don't need to invent new monsters, just awaken old ones. Because the best enemy is one they already believe in. And that's the true genius of strategic opposition. You don't fight it, you direct it. Like a river, you guide it toward your fortress. Let them crash against your walls, while you stand firm as the only thing that can hold the tide. The most dangerous enemy is the one who turns your friends against you, not with power, but with whispers. And Machiavelli understood. When opposition becomes invisible, you're not fighting words, you're fighting glances, silences, and rumors. At this level, power takes a new shape. It's no longer about what you show, it's about what they think you hide. Because people don't follow who is right, they follow who looks confident, composed, like they're always in control. That's why the sharpest minds don't silence every threat. They build their own story. They flood the space with their narrative. They steer perception before it solidifies. You don't eliminate your enemy, you use them. Let their resistance make you seem untouchable, mysterious, someone who doesn't play by the usual rules. Because people fear what they don't understand, and they respect what they fear. Here's the paradox. Sometimes those who challenge you shape you more than those who support you, because friends can soften your image, but enemies, they sharpen your edge. Every time they attack, they give you contrast. Every time they mention you, they keep you relevant. You don't just endure conflict, you become necessary because of it. But there's a limit. Too much visibility creates vulnerability. If they see everything, they can predict you, and if they can predict you, they can stop you. That's why the most Machiavellian minds never reveal their true intentions, not to enemies, not to friends, not even to themselves. Because once a plan is visible, it can be blocked. But a mystery, it protects itself. Silence is your shield. Ambiguity is your weapon. Let them guess. Let them judge. Let them mistake your calm for confusion, your distance for weakness. Let them design the wrong strategy, while you move in silence. Because the moment they think they know you, you evolve. That's how influence survives, not through control, but through unpredictability. Not by being loud, but by being unreadable. In the world of relationships, it's not always the strongest person who wins, but the one no one can quite figure out. So, in the next part, we'll enter the philosophy of concealment. Why saying too much is more dangerous than saying nothing, and why hiding your intentions isn't manipulation, but self-defense. Because once you've created an enemy, they start watching. Not your words, but your patterns. They study your rhythm. They collect your habits. And if you're careless, they'll see your next move before you've made it. So here's the question. In a world where everyone is watching, do you still have the courage to be silent?